Welcome to YOGATX. My name is Savannah, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and overall human who's curious about having a body. And this video will kind of just ask you to be curious about your body as well. It's meant for the hips and the low back. Hopefully it'll bring you some ease, but more than anything, I hope you find some education about what your body is liking, where it tends to get tight, and some moves that might help you appreciate your body a little bit more as you take it everywhere you go. So we'll go ahead and start on our hands and knees today. And we'll begin with something that truly asks that you get playful and curious. So before we do anything technical, I want you to just imagine that you're inside of a peanut butter jar and the lid is on and most of the peanut butter is gone, but you're trying to use your body to scrape out the remaining little bits of peanut butter. So you can use your hips to scrape the side wall, the back wall. If you've practiced yoga before, you might notice that we go into something like a cow pose here to scrape the lid with our head. Maybe you go into a cat pose to scrape the lid with your back. So right away, just drop this idea of wrongdoing or right doing in movement and become a little bit more positive and curious about your movement. It might even help to close the eyes, allowing your body to shift into different arrangements, maybe dropping one elbow down, reaching the other opposite elbow up, going side to side a few times, noticing if the neck has a tendency to hold, and then circling the hips around the knees. It can be nice to drive your hips back towards one heel, circle forward, drive the hips back to the other heel. And what you're doing is you're just pressing out into the edges of your tissue, the side hips, the lower back as you round the back. Then start to breathe in and out through the nose. Continue this circular movement. Possibly by now you've noticed movements that feel better than others, movements that you maybe haven't tried before but like. Great, and then we'll shift our shoulders roughly over our wrists. Take your right foot back and start to press into your heel towards the mat and away from the mat. We'll add in the breath, so on the exhale, shifting the right heel down towards the mat, and then breathing in as the chest shifts forward. Exhale, right heel shifts back. Inhale, the chest shifts forward. One last time, press the heel back and stay there. Drop the weight of your head. Pause for 3 breaths. After your 3rd breath, shift back forward and extend out through the right toes. Point the right toes to the wall behind you as you pull the chest forward. On the exhale, round through the spine, bend the right knee and draw it underneath your chest, maybe like you're shooting it in the direction of your nose. Breathing in, extend the right leg back, drop the belly, pull the chest forward, whole body movement as you round through the back, pulling the rib cage up and the right knee underneath you. Trying this 2 more times with your inhale, possibly bending the elbows if that gives you a little bit more stability as you draw the chest forward, and then straightening the arms as you pull the right thigh underneath you. We'll go 1 more time. And on this exhale, guide your right foot towards the top of the mat. So you can do a little caterpillar move here. Bring both hands on the inside of the right foot. Shift your right foot to the right edge of the mat and begin shifting the hips forward and back. So we start with the movement. I don't want you to make it too technical at first. Just feel the shift of the weight towards the right foot and then towards the back foot as the hips move. Then we'll add in the breath. Exhale as the hips draw back. If it feels good, maybe you're pulling the right toes up and drawing the toes back. Then breathing in, the hips come forward and drop down. Maybe the chest draws forward and up. Exhaling. Slowing the movement down with the breath. Inhaling. Once more, exhale, pull the hips back and pause. Choose to pause in a place that feels sustainable. So you could stay here without grimacing. Maybe it's with the toes down or the toes pulled up. Puff up through the lower spine. Take one more breath. And inhale, shift forward. Walk your right foot to the side, step it back. Plant the hands, extend the left leg towards the back of the mat, shifting the left heel towards the floor on the breath out, shifting the chest forward as you breathe in. Exhaling, the foot and calf stretch, inhaling, pressing off the toes. 3 more times. You might even feel that calf stretch sneak up behind the knees and towards the back of the legs. Then we'll step the left foot forward. Find that little caterpillar move with your foot or help the leg forward. Shift your left foot to the left side of the mat. Walk your hands up onto fingertips and then start to rock the hips forward and back. Maybe there's some head movement, pulling your gaze forward and up on the inhale as the hips drop down. Tucking your gaze down and behind you on the exhale as the front leg straightens. Right? So some people might like the feeling of keeping the toes connected to the floor. Others might find more relief, more benefit pulling the toes up. Then you'll find your little Goldilocks spot where you can ride the edges of sensation, but still be able to breathe. The second that that causes the breath to stop, we know that we've went too far. One more round. On your next breath out, pause with the left leg extended. Option for the toes to stay down or peel the toes up. You can also step your right knee back a bit or walk your hands back. Puff up through the low back. Take your gaze down. 1 to 2 more breaths. And then we'll rebend the left knee. Plant your hands down underneath the left shoulder. Wiggle your left foot out and behind you. Open up your knees and sink your hips back toward your heels for a child's pose. Taking 5 breaths in through the nose and 5 breaths out through pursed lips. This is always a great place to pause if you only have time for one pose. Hips and low back tend to love this position. And after opening up the back of the legs, we'll come into our downward facing dog, shifting our shoulders forward over the wrists, tucking the toes, lifting the hips up and back. Especially because we're taking care for the low back and the hips, we want the knees to be generously bent. The more the knees are bent, the more you can pitch the weight of your hips up and away from the floor and draw some length into your lower spine. Keep pressing through your index fingers and your ring fingers to help the shoulders stay stable. We'll shift the left foot towards the center of the mat. Take a breath in to reach your right leg directly behind you. That left knee stays bent and the hips keep reaching up and back. Softly bend the right knee and stir the right knee in circles. So you can imagine there is a spatula connected to your knee and you have a big pot of soup below you and you're just trying to scrape the edges of that soup without tilting the hips open and close too much. And then turn your right knee to point towards the right. Open your hips up now, reaching the right knee up towards the ceiling, grounding down through the hands. Pause for 2 breaths in and 2 breaths out. And with your second breath out, guide your right foot up towards the very top of the mat. Seal your back heel down. Breathe in to reach your hands forward and up. Finding your warrior one pose, get easy through the legs. Let the pelvis move. So if we tend to have a pelvis that's pitched forward and tipping the tailbone back, you might think of grounding through the back heel, pressing through the right foot until you can get that tailbone to soften down to where you could point it in any direction. It's not stuck in place. On your next breath in, reach the arms nice and wide. Exhale, chest reaches forward. We'll bring the hands towards the sides of the legs and slide the hands down the legs. You can either use your fingertips on the floor here, your hands on top of your thighs, or maybe you have two blocks that you'd like to use. We'll start to wiggle the hips from right to left, just poking out into the edges of our hips and the low back. Letting the weight of the head drop down. And then we'll center our hips again, pull the chest forward. Inhale the arms forward and up. Straighten the front leg. Exhale, bend the front knee, reach the left hand behind you and your right hand in front of you. We'll point the left toes out to the side just a little bit more. Same thing here, be aware of where your pelvis is. If the tailbone feels pitched behind you and your belly is dropping down, soften the tailbone, soften the hips, and let the pelvis move from side to side. Find that place that feels like center for you. I like to tell my students, after they've gone to the bathroom, of course, that your pelvis is like a bowl of water, and you want to be able to feel where the water is sloshing from side to side. So once you have that visual, try to balance the water in that bowl. Take a deep breath in. Exhale, right forearm to right thigh. Let the chest lean over towards the right. Let the left arm reach over your left ear and bend your left elbow over your cheek. Puff the left side of your rib cage up towards the ceiling. Keep the right forearm grounding down, pushing the right thigh towards the floor. Find a gaze point on the floor that you can pause with. And then slowly release your left hand down. Turn your right knee down towards the floor. Right hand comes down towards the floor, and we'll step the right foot back. Bend the knees. Pitch the hips up nice and high again, almost like you're reaching them to where the wall meets the ceiling behind you. With your next breath in, extend your left leg back and up. Not trying to get it very high, but just reaching it beyond the back of your mat, almost as if you have a light shining out of it, and it's shining directly at the wall behind you at about hip height. Keep the right knee bent. Now bend your left knee and stir that imaginary pot underneath you. You might feel some shakes and wiggles. It's okay. We're asking that the hip joint moves primarily, and the low back is pretty stable for now. Reverse the circle. And then point your left knee out to the side. Now open up through the low back, pressing down through the hands, pointing the left knee up towards the ceiling as you breathe in. Completing the exhale. And with your next breath out, step your left foot forward towards the top of the mat. Seal your back heel down. Walk your hands back. Breathe in as you reach your arms out and up by the ears. Check in with the hips and the low back. Can you move the pelvis, or is the tailbone pitched behind you? Soften through the legs. Feel that sloshy bowl of water again as your pelvis, and settle the water nice and even in that bowl. So it's less about what poses are going to be the quick fix for your hips and low back, but more about, are you aware of how you move your hips and your low back throughout life in any position you're in? And bringing the hands down to the front thigh, leaning the chest forward. Staying here, shifting the hips side to side, or bringing your hands down to the floor and shifting the hips down to the side. Getting the legs moving, the low back moving, the rib cage moving. And then grounding down through the strength of the legs, spreading the toes. As you press down through your left heel, you should feel a little lift up automatically in the body. Hold on to that strength. Inhale the arms back up and alongside the ears for a warrior one. Transitioning to a warrior two. Right hand reaches back, left hand reaches forward. We get really used to pitching the hips in one place and holding it there. So again, get a little freedom within the hips. Imagine that bowl of water again, setting the water at a level point. And then we'll lower, left elbow down to left thigh. Reach your right arm up and over your right ear. Bend the right elbow and let the right arm come over your cheek. Reach up through the right side of the rib cage towards the ceiling. Stay connected to the strength of the legs. If you have stability below the low back, it won't have to work so hard to keep itself in its position. And then on your next breath out, lower the hands down. Turn your right toes down towards the floor. Step the left foot to the back of the mat. Bend your knees down towards the floor. And I'm going to shift to the side of the mat so that you can see when I step my right leg out to the side, my toes are pointing forward in the same direction as my chest. My hands will come down roughly underneath my shoulders, and I'll start to rock the hips forward and back. So this is a really big inner thigh stretch here, and it can also be a very big outer ankle stretch here. We'll use the breath. Inhale shifts us forward. Exhale pulls the hips back. Slowing down the execution of your movement and just feeling. Do I push myself past where my body's like, yeah, this feels good. I feel like I'm getting something done. Don't try to make it about how far you can come back. And then we'll bring right knee in underneath the right hip. Left leg extends out to the side. Start that curious rock forward and back again. And then add in the breath. Closing the eyes. Inhaling as you shift forward. Exhaling as you gently contract the low abdomen. Hips draw back. We'll go 4 more breaths. Great, and after this next round, pulling the left knee underneath the left hip. We'll come to sit on our hips. So I'm going to shift the weight of my hips to the right. My right leg will be in front with the right sole of the foot connecting to the left thigh. You want something like 90 degrees in between the knees, but if that feels very difficult and the left side of the low back is getting real crunchy, you can bend the knees a bit more. We'll bring both arms up over our head. Try to go reaching for apples of some sort over the body. So you're lifting the rib cage out of the hips from side to side. And with your next inhale, pull both hands up. Let the shoulders come up by the ears. Exhale the right hand down. Lean into your right arm so that you can bend your right forearm and reach your left arm over the left ear. We'll go side to side. Inhale, reach up through the arms. Exhale, left hand comes down, right arm reaches over. Inhale, arms reach up. Exhale, right hand comes down, right forearm comes down, left arm comes over the left ear. One more time before we pause. So you get a little bit of everything in this pose. One leg is internal rotation, one leg is external rotation, and then the low back gets some movement independent of the hips. We'll turn the rib cage to the right. Walk your hands away from you. You can always use your arms as pillars, pitching the chest up, dropping the weight of the head. Or if it would be comfortable, another option is to drop down to your forearms. And then one last option I have for you is stacking the fists here so that the forehead has something to rest on. If there's any little shift or readjustment that you can make to bring yourself maybe 5 to 10% more ease in the body, let yourself be creative with those little urges. And after this next breath, walk the hands back to the hips. This time planting the right hand behind the right hip, pointing your toes so that you can come onto your shins. As you're pressing down through the right hand, imagine you're opening a doorknob to the right. You might even actively swivel your fingers to the right. Left arm reaches up and over, big stretch for the front of the left hip. The more you can point your left toes down towards the floor and spiral your left shin down towards the floor, the more stretch you'll be able to find through the front of the hip, the torso, and the side of the body. All of these muscles tie into the nature of how the low back is feeling and how it's functioning. Slowly release the hips back down. And we'll switch sides with the hips. So there's 2 ways you can do it. First way, however you want. Second way is plant your feet and turn the knees to the other side. So as you turn the knees to the left, you want your right thigh to be in contact with your left foot, close to 90 degrees if that feels comfortable, or bend it more if that feels a little bit too sticky. We'll start with the arms reaching up, climbing up a rope. One arm reaches a little bit higher than the other, lifting the rib cage up and out of the hips. Then inhale, both arms reach up. Let the shoulders lift up as you exhale. Left hand comes down, left forearm drops down. Reach your right arm actively over your right cheek. Inhaling, arms come back up, reach up. Leaning towards the right hand comes down, maybe even dropping the right ear towards the right shoulder. We'll go side to side one more time. Using your breath. You might feel some new sensations in that right hip. Right? A lot of yoga poses are turning out of the hips or external rotation. So it's not often that we get that sensation of spiraling the thigh towards the midline. Great. The next time you lean over towards the left, turn your torso down towards the floor, and you can use those pitched arms as pillars again for the chest, dropping the weight of the head. Releasing down towards the forearms, or making those fists, bringing the forehead down. And softening the belly and pressing the breath to the back of the rib cage and the sides of the rib cage. Letting there be a hard pause in your practice here, where everything stills. You might even be able to connect to the sounds immediately around you. Finishing this breath, taking one more after. And then we'll walk the hands back to the hips. Left hand plants next to the left hip. Point the toes. Press forward using your glutes and the strength of your left arm. Spiral the left hand away or actively turn the left fingers behind you. We'll reach the right arm up and over the right cheek. You might already be feeling that stretch through the side of the body, the front of the hip, the front of the thigh. If you want a little bit more, spiral your right foot down towards the ground. Take a deep breath in, let the breath express itself, and press the rib cage out to the edges. And then begin to release the hips back down. We'll bring the hands next to the hips, bend the knees in front of you, hook the hands behind your thighs, and we'll take some cat-cows, breathing in as the chest pulls forward, the elbows gather back and hug back. As you exhale, flex your toes and round through the rib cage. The chin draws towards the chest. The tailbone tucks under. We'll start with the feet. Inhale, toes reach forward, chest pulls up. Exhale, toes flex up. Straighten the arms, sink the rib cage back, chin to chest. Twice more, seeing if you can get a little bit lower down to the ground on each breath out. And then releasing back, lowering your forearms. We'll scoot the hips forward. Lie onto your back. Point the elbows out to the side. And let your hands come up in cactus arms and just start to windshield wipe the legs from side to side. And then we'll bring the knees through center. Stack the hands on top of the knees. Hold the legs away at about arm's length. Pause here for a moment as you take a breath in. On the exhale, thighs draw towards the chest. The low back lengthens. No need to squeeze. Inhale. Legs press the arms back out to their full length. Fingertips act as little grips or claws for the knees. Breathing out, thighs come in. And the low back slowly lengthens. Once more like this. Then we'll release the feet down. Allow the feet to come out a little wider and the knees to lean in towards one another. If you'd like a different variation, stretch the legs out long on the mat or in any position that would feel best for you. Finding again one of those hard pauses. But the breath continues. Staying here for as long as you'd like. Thanks for practicing.